The man everyone wanted to meet chose my wife instead. Then she vanished. I had never believed that a single night could erase 15 years of marriage, but the invitation resting on our kitchen table proved me wrong. My wife, Emily, stared at the golden envelope as though it contained a winning lottery ticket. It was an exclusive charity gala attended by politicians, business moguls, movie stars, and one mysterious guest whose identity had been kept secret for months. Everyone in the country wanted to know who he was. Every news channel talked about him. Every social media page speculated, and every guest hoped for just one handshake. Neither of us imagined that before the night ended, my wife would disappear without leaving behind a single word. Emily spent weeks preparing for the gala, buying a silver evening gown that shimmered under every light, and rehearsing polite conversations as though she expected to meet royalty. I teased her about acting like a teenager before her first school dance, but she only laughed and reminded me that opportunities like this came once in a lifetime. Deep inside, I felt strangely uneasy. She had never cared much about celebrities or wealthy people before, yet this mysterious man fascinated her in a way I couldn't explain. Looking back now, I realized my instincts were trying to warn me, but I ignored every sign because love often convinces us that fear is simply imagination. The ballroom looked like something from a dream. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. A live orchestra filled the room with elegant music, and cameras flashed every few seconds as famous guests arrived. Every conversation revolved around one question: who was the special guest? Suddenly the lights dimmed, the orchestra stopped, and the master of ceremonies welcomed the man everyone had been waiting for. When he walked onto the stage, the room exploded with applause so loud that it drowned out every other sound. He wasn't just famous. He was respected, admired, and followed by millions. Even I found myself standing to applaud without realizing it. For the next hour, he greeted guests with remarkable confidence, shaking hands and sharing brief conversations. Security surrounded him so closely that almost nobody could get near him. Then something unexpected happened. He paused in the middle of the ballroom, scanned hundreds of faces, and pointed directly toward our table. At first, I thought he was pointing at someone behind us. Then an assistant approached my wife with a smile and whispered something in her ear. Emily looked completely stunned before slowly standing up. Every eye in the room followed her as she walked toward the stage, while I remained frozen in my chair, unable to understand why she had been chosen. The audience erupted into cheers as Emily stepped onto the stage beside the mysterious guest. He greeted her warmly, spoke into her ear for a few seconds, and offered his hand. Soft music filled the ballroom as they began dancing beneath the glowing lights. The giant screens displayed every graceful movement, while thousands of guests applauded. My wife smiled more brightly than I had seen in years, and for a brief moment I convinced myself it was harmless. But then I noticed something disturbing. During the dance, he quietly slipped a folded black envelope into her hand. She hid it so naturally that almost nobody noticed, except me. When the music ended, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. Emily hugged the man politely before walking down the stage steps. I expected her to return to our table immediately, but instead she glanced toward me with an unreadable expression and quietly disappeared through a side hallway marked "Authorized Personnel Only." I stood up to follow her, but two security guards politely blocked my path, insisting that area was restricted. I tried explaining that my wife had just entered, yet they claimed nobody had passed through the door. I knew they were lying because I had watched her disappear with my own eyes, and suddenly every beautiful detail of the evening transformed into something terrifying. Nearly 20 minutes passed before panic replaced confusion. Emily wasn't answering her phone, and none of the staff admitted seeing her. I searched every hallway, every restroom, every balcony, and every exit, but she had vanished as though the building itself had swallowed her. Finally, one nervous waitress quietly approached me and slipped a tiny folded napkin into my jacket pocket without saying a word. I waited until nobody was watching before opening it. Written in hurried handwriting were just 7 chilling words. "Don't trust a man everyone admires. Leave now." My heart pounded as I looked toward the brightly lit stage, where the mysterious guest was smiling for cameras as though nothing unusual had happened. At that moment, I realized the real nightmare had only just begun. I forced myself to remain calm, but every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. Instead of leaving the ballroom, I quietly followed two members of the security team as they disappeared to the same restricted hallway. Hidden behind a decorative wall, I noticed an elevator that required a special access card. Just before the doors closed, a catering employee accidentally dropped a tray, creating enough confusion for me to slip inside unnoticed. The elevator descended instead of rising. When the doors opened, I found myself in a private underground level that looked nothing like the glamorous gala above. The luxury had vanished, replaced by silence, armed guards, and rooms that clearly weren't meant for guests. Keeping to the shadows, I searched corridor after corridor until I heard familiar voices behind a partially open door. Emily stood inside with a mysterious man and several people in expensive suits. To my surprise, no one appeared to be threatening her. Instead, the man placed a black envelope on the table and calmly explained that it contained evidence exposing a billion-dollar financial conspiracy involving several powerful investors attending the gala. He admitted he had chosen Emily because years earlier she had worked as a financial auditor with an unmatched reputation for honesty before leaving the profession to start our family. Someone inside the organization had secretly recommended her as the only outsider they could trust. Before Emily could answer, the room suddenly erupted in chaos. One of the investors burst through another entrance with armed bodyguards. Furious that the envelope had not been destroyed, the lights went out, alarms echoed to the underground floor, and shouting filled every hallway. I rushed inside just as two guards grabbed Emily by the arms. Without thinking, I tackled one of them while the mysterious man fought off another. For several terrifying minutes, the underground level became a battlefield of panic and confusion. When emergency backup lights finally switched on, the envelope had disappeared, and so had the investor who wanted everyone inside that room silenced forever. We escaped through a maintenance tunnel that led outside the convention center into the cold night air. Emily was shaking, not because she had been kidnapped, but because she had just discovered how many influential people were involved in conspiracy. She confessed that when the mysterious man invited her onto the stage, he had quietly whispered, "I need someone to corrupt can't buy." The dance had been nothing more than a distraction, allowing him to hand her the evidence without attracting suspicion. She had disappeared voluntarily because she believed helping expose the truth was the right thing to do. Hearing those words filled me with both pride and regret. I had spent the last hour doubting her when she had been risking everything for justice. The following morning, every television station carried breaking news. Multiple executives, politicians, and investors who had attended the gala were arrested after anonymous evidence was delivered to federal investigators overnight. Billions of dollars in illegal transactions, bribery schemes, and hidden accounts were uncovered. The mysterious guest refused every interview and disappeared from public view as suddenly as he had appeared. Reporters described him as the man who had sacrificed his own reputation to expose corruption from within. Yet no one outside a tiny circle ever learned the truth about Emily's role. To the world, she was simply another guest who had attended an unforgettable evening. Weeks later, life slowly returned to normal, but our marriage was different. We had survived fear, deception, and a night neither of us would ever forget. Emily admitted she should have trusted me enough to tell me what was happening, while I admitted that I had allowed suspicion to replace faith at the worst possible moment. Together we agreed that secrets, even those meant to protect someone, could destroy relationships if carried alone. The gala that almost tore us apart ultimately reminded us why trust had always been the strongest foundation of our marriage. Sometimes the greatest test of love is believing in someone when the evidence seems to say otherwise. Even now, whenever I see photographs from that glamorous gala, one image always captures my attention. It shows the exact moment the mysterious man reached out his hand and invited my wife onto the stage. To everyone else, it looked like an unforgettable dream come true. To me, it marks the precise second our ordinary lives disappeared forever. The man everyone wanted to meet did choose my wife, but not because she was lucky, beautiful, or famous. He chose her because, in a room full of powerful people, she was the only person whose integrity could not be purchased. And that single decision changed our lives forever.